We love the expo. There's something so exciting about seeing the world come together in one place. And when we heard Japan was hosting the 2025 edition, we knew we had to be there. But leading up to our visit, we started hearing stories: long queues, heavy crowds, and a few organizational issues. So in this video, I will share our experience at the Osaka Expo, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and help you decide whether it's really worth visiting. Let's get started. Good morning, fellow travelers. Welcome back to my channel, Ken Travels 360. Today we are coming to you from Osaka and we're visiting the Expo 2025. We got here at 9:10 since we got the 9 AM entrance slot. But as you can see, the lines to enter are already humongous. Still, we are making progress, so we'll see you inside soon. So after 45 minutes of queuing full security, we finally got in. Honestly, the crowd level is quite crazy here, and the organization for security is pretty bad. There were actually 3 lines trying to merge into one, and yeah, it took a long time. You know how much we love the Expos. We're big fans, having attended the Milan one back in 2015. Yeah, which was fantastic. But then we went to the Dubai one in 2021, and honestly, the one in Dubai was probably the best organized expo that we've ever experienced. We literally spent a whole week there, every single day, and it set such a high bar. So the burning question for this expo: can this one live up to the legacy? So we just had a look at the shop, and there were lots of plush toys of the mascot, but actually I think they look quite ugly, so we don't really like the design that much, so we passed. We tried to make some reservation for pavilions, but pretty much everything has been sold out. So this is the end of line of the USA Pavilion. Apparently it's 2 hours wait from here, which is crazy. Well, earlier you saw there was a 2 hours line for getting into the USA Pavilion, but luckily we found out that actually there's a separate line for English tour, which run like every hour or so, and the queue is much less. So after half an hour wait, we finally get to go in to the USA Pavilion. So we're finally inside the USA Pavilion, but there is more queuing. That's because the pavilion works on a guided group system. Basically, one group goes in, does one room, and as they move on to the next one, the next group comes in. It does make the queue move rather slowly, and you don't really have the flexibility to wander around at your own pace. Eventually, we were ushered into the first room, where we got a warm, enthusiastic welcome from one of the pavilion guides. She introduced us to this tiny animated star character called Sparkled, who is kind of your virtual companion throughout your visit. It's a cute idea, and it adds a little personality to the otherwise quite structured experience. From there, we'll guide through a series of exhibits, most of which focus heavily on America's role in global education. There's also a section celebrating the diversity of the country's landscapes, from deserts and mountains to cities and coastlines. It's informative but quite surface level, and because you're in a group, you're really rushed through it all. Now, the final session is probably the most interesting one. It's all about space, and honestly, it's the most visually impressive part of the whole pavilion. There's this immersive projection that simulates a rocket launch. Finally, you're standing on the ground, watching it blast off, and then the perspective shifts as if you're floating in orbit.
Exploring together, observing together, sharing
But that's where the visit ends, and to be honest, I was left feeling a bit underwhelmed. For a country with so much to showcase, the experience felt quite limited. You can't linger, you can't really engage with the exhibits in your own time. It's all very controlled, clearly designed to push through as many visitors as possible, and with the long waits to get in, it just doesn't feel like the payoff is quite there. After the US Pavilion, we tried to find another one to visit, but that's easier said than done. Most of the popular pavilions either require advanced reservations, which we don't have, or they've got massive queues. Malaysia, Luxembourg, Germany, you name it. It's the same story everywhere. With only one day to explore, the whole situation starts to feel a bit frustrating. We want to see more, but we just can't get into anything. So the Japan pavilions work on reservation basis, but they do allow you to come in apparently at 5 p.m. if you don't have reservation. I imagine there might be a queue that by then though. Eventually, we spotted the Mozambique pavilion, and to be honest, we only got in because there wasn't a queue. So we're trying to VR kit in Mozambique. But to their credit, they have a VR headset experience that we could try out, and it's actually kind of fun. After that, we headed up to the Grand Ring. It's a huge wooden structure that wraps around the entire central expo grounds. At 2 kilometers in circumference and 22 meters high, it gives you a proper bird's eye view. And from up there, you can really see just how big the crowds are and how long those queues stretch. Wow, the three starters Pokemon are here. Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle. Well, that's the Azerbaijan pavilions. I think last time they have a more modern design, but this time I think they have gone for something more traditional, very Islamic. The expo does run a lottery system where you can apply for timed entry to certain pavilions and events. We managed to get a slot for the Gundam Next Future Pavilion, so let's head there next. By the way, we were supposed to be able to make more pavilion reservations once we were inside, but everything was completely booked out, and the app was really atrocious. So we finally made it to the Gundam Next Future Pavilion. This is probably one of the most hyped pavilions at Expo 2025. We used one of our lottery slots to get a confirmed reservation. So let's see if it was worth the effort. Once you're through the initial waiting area, the experience begins in a small room where we watch a short video. It introduced the mission of the Gundam Open Innovation Consortium, which is all about building a sustainable future using mobile suits. The video is in Japanese, but thankfully there are English subtitles. From there, we are taken into what they call the orbital elevators. And this part is actually pretty cool. You watch an animated launch sequence where we blast off from Earth. First, we pass over the Osaka Expo grounds, and then we travel through space, eventually arriving at the Star Jaburo station. The room shakes, the visual change around you, and it really does feel like you're moving through space. At one point, we even saw the northern lights drifting past.
When we arrived at the station, we are guided into the next room, which represents Star Jaburo Station itself. At the space station, you will see animated panels showing Gundam collecting space debris, parts of its mission to keep space travels safe. There's also a glimpse into life in orbit, where futuristic space colonies are growing disease-resistant crops. But then, things take a turn. Suddenly, the space station is attacked. Massive fireballs explode across the screens, and alarms start going off. We are quickly evacuated into an emergency chamber, adding a bit of drama to the whole experience.
We must evacuate. We are under attack.
Here, there's a long video featuring a battle between Zeon, who is the bad guy, and Mobile Suit Gundam. The presentation is shown on screens on every side of the ward, as well as the roof, so visually it's very impressive. Unfortunately, this part is entirely in Japanese, and there are no subtitles. I get that with a fully immersive 360 setup, adding subtitles might be tricky, but it's still a little bit disappointing, especially given this is an international event. I could roughly follow the storyline from the visuals, but if you don't know Gundam, it's definitely harder to connect with. Once the battle wraps up, we're transported back to Earth, and that's the end of the Pavilion experience. On the way out, you get a chance to see and take photos with the full-sized Gundam model, which is definitely a highlight for fans. After the Gundam Pavilion, we walked around to see if there was another pavilion we could visit without too much of a wait. We went up to the Grand Ring to get a bird's eye view of the Expo grounds. But even from up there, we could see long queues almost everywhere. Belgium, Uzbekistan, India all had lines stretching out the front. The Australian pavilion was especially busy, probably because they had orchestra performing outside, which was attracting a lot of attention. However, eventually we spotted one pavilion that looked a bit more manageable, and we thought we might actually have a chance of getting in.
So we finally found something worth entering. No, what I really mean is finally we found something that we could actually just walk in without half an hour, 45 minutes wait.
Or trying to fight the reservation system.
Well, and it's Spain. It's a very interesting design. It's kind of like tiles, azulejos, but we'll find out what they have. So we're inside Spain's pavilion now, and the theme is Currents That Connect.
The exhibition itself is fairly short. It starts with the theme of exploration, focusing on sea voyages and Spain's long legacy of discovery. The installations highlight the country's relationship with the sea, touching on its cultural, economic, and symbolic importance. Overall, it was mildly interesting. It's more of a pleasant walkthrough than a deep cultural dive. It didn't really deliver a memorable message. After Spain, we noticed the queue for the Australia Pavilion was quite short, so we went in. At the entrance, a kangaroo and a koala greeted us straight away. Inside, we see a forest-themed installation. It's immersive and calming, with visuals inspired by native landscapes. Then we step into a huge space with a massive projection screen showing dreamlike animations of Australia's land and sea.
So we just found the UK pavilion, and there's a 90 minutes wait to get in. I don't think I want to wait that long to be shown what UK has. So this is the Suntory area where there's supposed to be a show tonight.
So here's what happened. In early June, they discovered Legionella bacteria in the water at 20 times the legal limit, so all the water shows were cancelled. We'd been really looking forward to Under the Midnight Rainbow show, but it was cancelled during our visit. The issue's been fixed now, and shows resumed on 11th July, but just a bit too late for us. Next, we decided to head to the Japan Pavilion. It should have just opened up for walk-ins. On the way there, we passed the pavilions of China, Austria, Switzerland, Colombia, Portugal, and Canada. Each one stood out with its own eye-catching architecture, but united by one universal expo theme: the queue.
Well, we just managed to get into the host nation pavilion, Japan. Yeah. It actually didn't take that long, about half an hour ways, probably slightly less. So that was quite good. They said come back after 5 p.m. for those who have no reservations, and we managed to get in. Yeah.
Alright, welcome to the Japan Pavilion. The theme here is Between Lives, and it's all about sustainability, regeneration, and how the choices we make today shape the future. The pavilion itself is circular and split into three zones: the plant, the farm, and the factory. We start in the plant area, and right away you see these huge tanks full of microorganisms. They are busy fermenting waste from around the expo site. It sounds a bit gross, but it's actually amazing. They break it all down to produce clean water and even generate electricity. Basically, nothing goes to waste. Next, we are at the very center of the pavilion, a wide circular water basin filled with crystal clear water. And here's the cool part. This water was once waste generated right here at the expo. It's been purified and returned to the cycle.
So next we'll be seeing the Mars rock. We can actually get to touch it.
This meteorite was found in the year 2000 in the Yamato Mountains in Antarctica, about 350 kilometers from Japan's Showa Station. Next up is the farm area. Here, the star of the show is, well, algae. Yes, algae. It's not exactly the most glamorous thing, but Japan's managed to make it one of the most photographed spots in the whole pavilion. And how?
Here, 32 unique types of algae is represented as adorable Hello Kitty characters.
And before you leave the farm, you pass through an algae curtain, which makes for a surprisingly beautiful, almost otherworldly scene. Finally, we stepped into the factory area. This is where innovation takes a more hands-on turn. We saw robotic arms at work, building stools that are actually used all around the expo grounds. Then there's a whole section about designing and building in a softer, more adaptable way. It's easier to repair, gentle on the planet, and resilient by design. The philosophy here is fascinating. Sometimes, by not resisting, you actually can't be defeated. Some parts are even made to break on purpose, absorbing impact so that the most important parts stay protected.
Well, the Japan Pavilion is probably the most interesting one that we have seen today.
I'm glad we got in.
Yeah.
I also really like that it's not a guided group experience. You can take your time. If something catches your attention, you can just stay with it for as long as you want. And who knew I'd walk out of here with a new appreciation for algae? After the Japan Pavilion, we moved on to the evening shows. First up is a projection mapping display on the outer walls of the Shining Hat, one of the Expo's landmark buildings. The concept is cool, a series of short projections, each 30 seconds to a minute long, created by artists from Japan and around the world. I'm usually a big fan of projection mapping, but this one felt a bit disjointed. Different projections didn't flow together seamlessly, And unlike the best shows, where the visuals are tailored perfectly to the building's shape, these felt more like generic clips pasted on a wall. One by one, people started drifting away, and we joined them. It's better to head up to the Grand Ring early and grab a good spot for the drone show. After the drone show, a lot of people started heading for the exits, which actually makes it a great time to check out some of the pavilions that had long lines earlier. You skip that exit rush and sometimes walk right in. We managed to get straight into the UAE pavilion, but honestly, it was a letdown compared to the last edition when they were the host. Qatar was the same story, in and out pretty quickly. I did have my eye on the French pavilion, but even at this hour, the line was still long, and that, in a way, summed up the whole Expo experience. So the Japan pavilion and the drone shows were the real stars. But before all that happened, I'd already taken a moment to gather my thoughts on everything we'd seen. So I'll leave you with that.
So, what did I think of the expo? Honestly, I actually feel pretty disappointed. Japan has a global reputation for being efficient, but that just wasn't on display here. The entry process was a mess. We waited nearly 45 minutes just to get through security. The lines were long, badly organized, and people around us were clearly struggling. I even saw a few visitors faint in the queue, and that says it all really. Once inside, it didn't get much better. The crowd levels were overwhelming. Any pavilion that looked remotely interesting had a queue of an hour or even 2 hours. And to be frank, the pavilions themselves didn't wow me, especially when I compared them to what we saw at the last expo at Dubai. Back then, they were bold, imaginative designs and a real sense of scale. This time, the venue feels smaller and the overall creativity just isn't at the same level. Now there is a reservation system in place. It's a lottery for advanced access. but it was clunky and difficult to use. And once you're inside, you're meant to be able to make same-day reservations through the app, but it's really unreliable. It shows places as available when they are not. And by the time you get to the end trying to make the reservation, well, it shows it's fully booked. The whole thing just feels chaotic and really frustrating. On top of all that, I found the whole event felt very geared towards a domestic audience. And yes, of course, it's being held in Japan, but this is supposed to be a world expo. You expect things to be more international in tone. A lot of the signage, presentations, and even the overall approach just didn't make much sense if you weren't local. It really missed the mark in terms of welcoming a global audience. We've also booked tickets for the evening water shows, one of the highlights, supposedly, using one of the lottery slots. But that was cancelled as they found Legionella bacteria in the water. I was really looking forward to it, but this was another letdown, especially after all the effort to secure a reservation. The bad thing is that we used up one of the reservation slots to get this, and they knew about it for about a month, and we only find out about it when we're here. And there was no compensation for us to reserve another pavilion or event. So what's my overall verdict? Honestly, I wouldn't recommend coming to the expo. There's so many fascinating things, sights and experiences around Osaka area that are far more rewarding. Unless you're already here and have a lot of patience, it's just not worth the hassle. You will likely spend hours in queues only to see pavilions that aren't all that engaging, especially if you have been to the previous one in Dubai. It's frustrating, time-consuming, and ultimately underwhelming. If you've got limited time in Japan, I'll say skip this and explore the rest of Kansai instead. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. If you do, please boop the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. I'll see you in the next video and hopefully a much better travel experience. Ciao!